Stop me if you heard this before, but Carlos Correa has agreed to a big-time contract, pending a physical. This time, it's apparently with the Minnesota Twins, who are giving Carlos Correa a 6-year deal for $200 million. What a crazy offseason for Carlos Correa. Now, the deal, you see the particulars right here, includes a vesting option for 4 additional years worth $70 million if Carlos Correa passes a medical review and hits some of the at-bat thresholds in later years. Wow. Look, on the heels of what transpired with the Giants deal falling apart and the Mets deal falling apart, I could appreciate why Carlos Correa goes back to Minnesota. They've already given him a physical, played there last year. Their stock with the medical staff, the organization, everyone in that clubhouse loved him. But this, to me, just feels weird from a Carlos Correa and a Mets standpoint. Look, I bashed the Giants for signing him. Didn't make any sense. And, Carlos Correa is not going to age well. And there's injury history that we know of and injury history for the future that concerns me and clearly the Giants and now the Mets. But I think this is a bad situation for Carlos, who should have taken a deal with the Mets for mega buck money in just a couple of years, because the Mets have an opportunity to go to the World Series and win it. And make no mistake, Carlos Correa would have been in the middle of this batting order. And you have the owner on record when they signed him saying this was the move to put us over the hump. Now, obviously, with Steve Cohen, they won't stop, can't stop, and won't slow down in terms of accumulating talent and trying to make a World Series run. But the Braves are loaded, the Phillies are loaded, and the Mets are still absolutely loaded, and that rotation's great. But this is one of those deals for the Twins, it's a win. But for Carlos Correa and for the Mets, make no mistake, this is a lose-lose. What a moment for him and the Georgia Bulldogs as they left no doubt who the best team in college football is last night, dominating TCU en route to their second straight national championship. Georgia finishes the season 15-0, and Bennett rides off into the sunset as a 2-time national champ after accounting for 6 touchdowns last night. And let me tell you what Stetson Bennett is. He's a legend. Sometimes we get too hung up on how many stars someone had in high school as a recruit or what someone's going to be at the NFL level. Just watch him play. Look at the resume. They called him the mailman because he would deliver. Last year, he's a dominant Tim Tebow-like player at Georgia. An all-time great in the history of college football, Georgia football, and Kirby Smart deserves so much credit. Obviously, he was a brilliant assistant for all those years with Nick Saban. Now, back-to-back championships. Georgia is the #1 program in college football, not Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. And this is everything. And I'm just obsessed. And look, I need to say this. 65-7? 65-7? I went to sleep at halftime. That's not a championship game. That's an exhibition. And you always knew that TCU was a house of cards, and credit Max Duggan and credit Sonny Dykes, but this is why I didn't want TCU to be in the college football playoffs in the first place, and why you need 12 teams, and why you need Ohio State and Alabama and USC and all these teams in so you could have a real postseason. The semifinals were great. Last night was a snooze fest. Literally, I went to sleep. Again, credit Georgia, credit Kirby Smart, credit Stetson Bennett. I mean, love the fact that it was in Hollywood. That is an unbelievable script for a movie. But my goodness, we need 12 teams in the college football playoffs immediately. Get ready for the summer of Rodgers. More like the winter of Rodgers, but you get it. The future of Aaron Rodgers is now in question after the Green Bay Packers inexplicably blew a chance to get into the postseason on Sunday night. What an embarrassing performance by Green Bay. I still can't believe they lost this game. I can't believe we're not previewing the Packers and the 49ers on Wild Card Weekend. And look, Rodgers' pick right there was awful, but the real culprit in this game was Matt LaFleur. Team was undisciplined. couple of grotesque penalties, why he decided to go for it early in the game, own territory, 4th and 1, made no sense. And they didn't post against the Lions all year. And, the Lions knew they were eliminated before the game. And listen, Green Bay had a chance. They were outplaying Detroit in the first half of that game. Detroit, Jared Goff outside, and the Lions earned it, and the Packers choked. And now there's this. Aaron Rodgers, Randall Cobb walking off together. Rodgers wouldn't give Jameson Williams his jersey, saying, I need to keep that one. And Rodgers reportedly meeting today with Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. And look, Goonie has obviously failed Rodgers forever, going back to 2020, Jordan Love instead of T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, things that we've been over for literally years on Time to Shine, but still relevant with another Packer playoff failure. Look, if I'm the Green Bay Packers, though, I'm begging Rodgers to come back. Jordan Love is terrible at football. He wasn't great in college, should have never been their pick, should have never been a first-round pick in general. And what are you going to do? Have Aaron Rodgers go to the Jets or go to the Tennessee Titans or trade him to the Vegas Raiders and reunite him with Devontae Adams? No, you should run it back. And Matt LaFleur should bring back Nathaniel Hackett on his staff, and that's how it should go in Green Bay. And you should, imagine this concept, and wide receivers in the offseason. The Green Bay Packers, when you look at the failures, it always goes back to Gutekunst and personnel. For this year, I blame Matt LaFleur. I'm not going to tell you Rodgers had a great season. Obviously, he was good, not great, but he's lower on the list in terms of blame. And the Packers and their fans should be begging the all-time greats to return to Green Bay. Welcome back, Time to Shine. A lot of great stuff. Get off my chest on a Tuesday. Buckle up, Buttercup. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears control the 2023 NFL Draft, and in so many ways, they control the entire offseason. Told you last week on Time to Shine, Chicago was going to lose, Houston was going to win, and the Bears, like we predicted before the season started, will be the worst team in the NFL and get the number 1 pick in the draft. And I thought Poles nailed it on how to handle the news conference today. He put a for sale sign at number 1 and basically told the Texans and the Colts, who desperately want Bryce Young, make your best offer and trade up. Now, I'm sure that Carolina would want him. I'm sure the Jets would want him. I'm sure Washington would want him. I'm not convinced Chicago wants to fall that far back. Now, for the sake of conversation, I think that they should keep Justin Fields. I'm a big fan. But obviously, Poles didn't draft him. Bryce Young would have a cheaper contract. And, obviously, you can still get a haul for somebody like Fields if you traded him to Indianapolis or someone else like the Jets or Washington. But the fact that they're in this position because Houston played to win and Lovie Smith helped his old team, build a statue for Lovie with the beard outside the stadium in Chicago. Obviously, Lovie Smith once took Rex Grossman and the Bears to the Super Bowl, and listen, good for Lovie. He knew he was going to get fired no matter what, and the Texans organization, clueless. And listen, I would have never hired Lovie Smith in the first place. I would have never interviewed David Culley in the first place. He's only been interviewed for one head coaching job in his life, and that was to coach the Houston Texans. And, these men, as people, deserved better. Texans are the absolute worst. I'm happy that karma bit them, and I'm thrilled the Bears have this pick because now Ryan Poles controls everything. And, I killed Poles, and I stand by it, and I was right, for trading a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, who was dreadful in Chicago, and now with the number 1 overall pick, that's a pseudo first-round pick because Miami doesn't have a first-round pick next year, so that's pick 32 in the upcoming draft. So they have a golden opportunity with $100 million, oh, by the way, in cap room to quickly rebuild this thing and give Justin Fields the requisite talent. They can trade back to 4. They can trade back to 2. Texans and Colts, as I mentioned, they want that number 1 pick, and they're going to want Bryce Young like nothing else. They can get studs on defense, rebuild the offensive line. Got to get Fields some receivers, trades, think DeAndre Hopkins or Brandon Cooks or Mike Evans or whoever else it is. I can't wait. So fired up for the Chicago Bears and everything they can do this offseason. It's going to be fun. Got to get this off my chest. Colts GM Chris Ballard started his year-end press conference saying that he failed. Yeah, no kidding. The entire Colts season was a failure. And see, Chris Ballard, he likes to tell everyone how smart he is. Chris Ballard has never won a division. And when he said, I failed, I mean, it was the most honest thing ever. And the fact that they're even considering having Jeff Saturday continue as the head coach, I mean, that's embarrassing. I can't believe that Chris Ballard kept his job while Frank Reich got fired. Gotta get this off my chest. Cliff Kingsbury predictably fired as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals after their 4-13 season. Sure, I get it. And Kingsbury was awful in 4 years. And, of course, Cliff was going to get fired. I can't believe he was hired 4 years ago in the first place. I can't believe he got a contract extension 10 months ago. And they were atrocious at home. And how about the Nugget, Michael Bidwell, saying that Kyler Murray is going to be involved in picking the next head coach? Oh, good. Same Kyler Murray who was screaming and cursing at Kingsbury. You had to put a clause in his new contract that he had to study requisite amount of film. I think that one of the reasons why this is a dead-end job is because Kyler Murray, who's injured, not going to be ready to start the season, Kyler Murray doesn't give a damn, and that's a huge problem when you have that kind of cat at the quarterback position. Got to get this off my chest. What in the world was Chargers head coach Brandon Staley doing on Sunday? This was a first guess. How do you leave your starters in? I wouldn't have played anyone with the 5 seed locked up. And what happens? What do you know? Mike Williams gets hurt. And Mike Williams was injured earlier in the year, and Keenan Allen was injured earlier in the year, and Justin Herbert hurt his ribs earlier in the year. You already don't have Slater. Bosa just came back. Derwin James wasn't playing. Brandon, you got to keep everybody in bubble wrap. You were locked into the Jaguars matchup. I mean, it's the second consecutive year Brandon Staley has found up Week 18. Obviously, the year before with the Raiders and not playing for the tie and playing for the playoffs, and now this? Look, Chargers should be able to beat Jacksonville on Saturday night, and then they should be able to at least compete with Kansas City if that's the matchup in the divisional rounds. Anything less is going to be a major disappointment. More proof Brandon Staley has no idea what he's doing.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell for more videos.